Hello, and welcome back to my channel Latveria Library, where I talk about everything comic book related. Today, I want to tackle a very important part of the DC universe that I really don't hear much about, but it's probably one of the most interesting. The Avatars. Who are they? What is their role? Who chooses them? And so on and so forth. I want to at least go over the green, the red, and the gray in this video. Then in another video, maybe go over the others. This is a project I've been dying to work on, and can't wait to share it with you all. Well, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and let's get into it. First, I would like to go over the green, and its avatar, Swamp Thing. But to understand the role of the Avatar of the Green, we first have to go over the Parliament of Trees, and the first appearance of the Green. The Green first appeared in Swamp Thing Volume 2, Issue 47. Although some of the ideas were developed in Alan Moore's beautifully dark run before that, 47 is the first full appearance of the idea. It starts off at the end of Issue 46, when Constantine tells Swamp Thing about an evil cult of male witches that want to unleash a dark entity that could destroy heaven, and that they reside in South America. But because Constantine promised in previous issues to give Swamp Thing knowledge about his powers, at this point he could travel through plant life, by the way, they make a pit stop at a place in the Amazon the natives call the Parliament of Trees. There, he will learn everything he needs to know. So he says goodbye to his girlfriend Abby Arcane and heads to the Amazon. Because he can travel through plant life, he arrives in minutes. Constantine was already there waiting for him, and the local natives, having seen many plant elementals before, start to lead them through the jungle. Swamp Thing asks Constantine where they are leading them, and Constantine says, "Plant elementals are indestructible, so when they live too long and grow too wise for the distractions of the world, where do you think they go?" They then arrive at an opening in the forest, and then he tells Swamp Thing that he can't go any further, that humans aren't allowed unless they are called upon. While walking through, Swamp Thing has a sense of deja vu. The further he goes in, the more familiar it feels, like he's finally home. Old plant elementals all around him, rooted in place. It's like a graveyard of legends, but no answers to his questions. Finally, one of the old elementals says, "No questions asked." It could hear his thoughts. It then says that flesh speaks but wood listens. You have approached the Parliament. Your ancestors welcome you. Swamp Thing asks, "How can I have lineage if I was an accident?" The elemental tells him that there are no accidents, and he is a necessary creation of the world. That he is the same as him, and his name used to be Alex Olson. In 1905, he was a scientist working in a swamp experiment. It was sabotaged, and there was an explosion. It killed him. Swamp Thing then says that the same thing happened to him, except his name was Alec Holland. The elemental then tells him that coincidence is the pattern of the world's bark. The stories of all that are rooted here have similarities. A man dies in the flames, and a monster rises from the mire, is always their beginning. And their ending is always in the grove. Swamp Thing tells him that he cannot rest yet. He has much to do. He came seeking knowledge that could help him. His roots start to intertwine with all the elementals, but so does his mind. It's transported to a place among the souls of giants, and he sees all the lives that had come before him. They know so much about his vegetable form and how to use it to its fullest potential. Swamp Thing had already known how to regrow and travel through the green, but now he learns that he can change his size, animate dead wood, manipulate insects with scents and juices, and create multiple forms at once. The possibilities seemed endless. Finally, they sense Swamp Thing. He tells him that he has come to seek knowledge, that a danger threatens the world, and wants to learn more about his powers. They tell him power tempts anger. Anger is like wildfire, and to avoid it. And that they sense an uncertainty in him. Swamp Thing says he has traveled the country and seen much evil. How could nature allow such things? The elementals then tell him that if you wish to understand evil, you must understand the bark, the roots, the worms of the earth. Swamp Thing doesn't understand how this helps him, and the Parliament severed the ties, leaving him with more questions than answers. But in issue 65, the Parliament explains to Swamp Thing that Earth is mother to all living things, and she shares her bounty with all her children. But man is her problem child, and his destiny lies beyond her somewhere, in the stars. In his race to vacate her womb, he threatens to devour her other young. A buffer between the will of man and the needs of nature was called for, and so she created elementals. Each age has its plant to act as a protector and a defender of the green. And as each tree god passes into the mind, aka the green, a new seed is planted and grows into the next avatar. I paraphrased a little, but I kept most of Alan Moore's quote the same because it's so beautifully worded. He truly is a magnificent writer. So what we learn from these issues is that the green is an energy force that connects all plant life and is its life force. Living in that energy force is the Parliament of Trees, which are a collective of plant elementals who have finished their time as the avatar of the green and share one unified mind that guide and teach the current avatar until his time comes. The title of avatar is bestowed upon a champion selected by the green, becoming the living embodiment of the elemental force that animates all plant life. The avatar protects all plant life from all threats, and is basically a god. He can make duplicates, grow to different sizes, and travel anywhere in minutes using the green. Heck, he could smother the whole world with plant life if he wanted to. The current avatar is Swamp Thing. Although other people like Poison Ivy can tap into the green, none can use it to the extent of the avatar. Now, this brings us to one of the green's biggest threats, the Gray and its avatars. The Gray premiered in Swamp Thing Volume 2, Annual Number 4, and was created by writer Steve Bissett and artist Pat Broderick. It starts with Swamp Thing traveling through the green. He sees a vague shifting of gray shadows. Despite a feeling of dread, he starts to swim towards it. The green starts to melt into the gray, but still he keeps moving closer. It leads him into a world devolved of sunlight, a dank, glowering realm of darkness. Suddenly the gray shape grabs him. It starts to consume him inside and out, until he hears a familiar voice whispering to him. It was Abby. She snaps him back to the physical world, and Swamp Thing tells her about the hellish gray realm beyond the green. He still has some of the gray on him. Abby removes it and tells him it feels and looks like mold. Meanwhile in Gotham, the gray head possessed a construction worker. It told him to climb higher and higher, until he finally died from the pain the gray inflicts. It then eats his insides. Batman arrives at the scene of the crime, and one of the officers already there drops the body. Batman quickly lunges for it, and it dissolves in his hands. What's left of the body is taken to the morgue and examined. Batman and Jim Gordon sit in on the exam. The examiner tells them it's some kind of fungal parasite, probably inhaled through the mouth, and spreads throughout the entire body. She then tells them to find anybody who has come in contact with the body and examine them. Batman heads back to the Batcave to burn off the spore residue from his body, but he's afraid that some may have gotten in his lungs. There's nothing he can do about it at the moment, so he decides to try to track down the cause of this fungal parasite. Thinking he may have a lead, he heads to Arkham Asylum. He starts to look through the Floronic Man's files, but doesn't find any leads. He decides to talk to Poison Ivy, hoping she knows something. She She's been doing experiments with plants and animals, but nothing involving fungus. She tells Batman she won't help him, that his city can burn. But he tells her that she has told him everything he needs to know. Batman leaves and drives around Gotham, looking for some sort of lead, but comes up with nothing. There are no answers for the horrors he has witnessed. He ends up at the police station with Gordon, and he finally has an idea. A creature called Swamp Thing had engulfed the city when his girlfriend was on trial like a year ago. He might be connected. So Gordon searches her files and finds her address. He sends her a letter saying there is some unresolved factors involving her case, and asks if she could come to Gotham. Cut back to Gordon's office, and they have dug up reports of this fungus killing people all the way back since the 1700s. That every 15 to 20 years this happens. But suddenly they are pulled away. A man in Chinatown is climbing a building, just like the last. Batman glides to the top of the building and grabs the man's hand, but it disintegrates and the man falls. Batman can only think about his own body. His lungs feel like they're thickening, and he starts to cough. He doesn't know how much time he has left, but he needs to hurry. We cut to Louisiana, and Batman has arrived at the swamp. Swamp Thing feels as if he can't trust him, even though he's a hero. But he senses fear and urgency upon him. He's also flushed with fever. Swamp Thing had been watching him for 2 days, and it's a good thing he was, because the fungus had ravaged his lungs. It was hard for Batman to breathe. Finally, he ends up passing out, and Swamp Thing was there to catch him. He can see the fungus that has ravaged Batman's lungs. It's starting to spread through his bloodstream. That explains the fear the Swamp Thing had sensed on him. He examines the spores and realizes that he had seen this before. It's the same organism that had attacked him in the green. He decides to head beyond the green to that hellscape once more. The gray threads beckon, but this time he welcomes them. He intertwines with the gray, and he can feel and see them all over Gotham City, spreading and killing. Finally, he lets go, and the gray obliges. Batman wakes, and Swamp Thing tells him that he had removed the spores from his lungs. He asks if he could do it for more people, but Swamp Thing tells him that most people probably wouldn't survive the process, that Batman barely did. He then tells him to go back to Gotham City and try to make the victims as comfortable as possible, that the spores have always been there and may always be. Swamp Thing then heads back into the gray and is suddenly grabbed by some creature. Swamp Thing struggles, but to no avail. The creature, with this barely understandable voice, says its name is Matango. At that moment, Abby snaps him back to the waking world once again. Now in issue 100, after a long setup, which I recommend reading, we finally find out about Matango in the Goal of the Gray. Swamp Thing meets with one of the oldest members of the Parliament of Trees to learn how to create a new body for his daughter. He is told about the Garden of Eden and how it was the Parliament's first home. It lies in Antarctica, which is frozen over now. There was a battle there dating before man between the green and the gray. Obviously the avatars are meant to protect the green and its life, but they are also willing to share the world with others. But the gray intends to reshape the earth in its image, a world of rotten decay, of fungus and mold. The elder tells him Matango attempted to take control over his body. He is still wounded from it. It's a constant struggle to keep his mind connected to the green. Matango finally forced them out of Eden, and that's why they are located in the Amazon now. Continued in issue 103, Matango is after Swamp Thing's daughter, so he makes the decision to take her to the Parliament of Trees, figuring the Gray wouldn't be able to get her there. But Matango had taken over one of the Swamp Thing's husks, and unfortunately caught up to them. He drags him down into the Gray. Swamp Thing and his daughter were tight in its grasp, and Matango finally explains who he is. His name was Alan Halliman, and he was chosen by the Green to be its avatar. He was the one before Alec. Continued in issue 104, the Parliament of Trees explained that Matango was the 13th elemental. He had used the Gray to take over Alan Halloman before he connected to the Green. They finally explain everything to Swamp Thing and Abby. They say at the beginning of creation, the Forest Lords seeded the planets with the potential for life. Not just the green, but red, blue, and violet. Some life took shape briefly on some planets, while on others, life didn't sprout at all. But finally on Jupiter, Earth, and another planet that has now perished, life finally blossomed and thrived. While the green gained dominion over the Earth, on this other planet, fungi and mold took over. But the Gray's world orbit drifted too close to Jupiter's gravity and was pulled apart. The life seared into a collective consciousness that retreated into dormancy as it searched for a home. A meteor carrying the fungi, or the Gray, had fallen to Earth. At the time, Matango had been the avatar of the Green. The spores were starting to spread throughout the Earth, and the Parliament wanted to create a new protector to absorb the Gray so they could learn more from it. But Matango said no, that he would absorb it and report back to the Parliament with its intentions. But Matango had an ulterior motive. He wanted to build his own Parliament, and merging with this new life form, he might be able to achieve it. But never could he have guessed that the life form had a will of its own, and it would merge with his. He returns to the Parliament of the Green, changed. They could no longer read his thoughts. But they had made an agreement to coexist with the Gray, and for a long time, that agreement held. Matango worked as an ambassador for the Gray. But finally, a new race came to be. Unlike other races that grew and evolved with the Green, this race was placed among it, the human race. It had a potential for destruction and devastation, so the Parliament built a wall around themselves for protection, while Matango wanted the destruction unleashed. The Parliament triggered the Ice Age, making a barrier between the old race of man and the new. A war ensued between the Green and the Gray, causing mass extinction. Many of the Parliament were lost to the Gray, but they finally made a compromise, which the new race of man annihilate the old, and man's gradual destruction of the environment quenched Matango's thirst, and has kept the peace until now. So now what we've learned about the Gray in these issues is it's a fungal consciousness from a planet long destroyed. It's a primal force that represents all mycos of the Earth. It works to infiltrate and take control, much like a virus. Its first avatar was called Matango, who acts like a representative, protector, and can move through mushrooms and mold, much like the Green. During the New 52s, the Gray's avatar is Mickey, and on Earth 2, its avatar is Solomon Grundy. Although the Gray on that Earth acts more like the Rot or the Black, but the Rot is another story. Finally, this brings us to the Red and its avatar. It's really hard to pinpoint who created the Red and its first appearance, because it goes by many names before it's called the Red, like the template, morphogenetic field, and the life web. I honestly didn't know much about the Red until I read Jeff Lemire's amazing Animal Man New 52 run a couple years ago. Then a friend handed me a couple volumes of Grant Morrison's run. So I guess the Red was created by Grant Morrison, and its first full appearance was in Animal Man issue 18. Although it's referenced and hinted at before, I'm pretty sure that the first actual appearance is in issue 18. It starts when a physicist named James Highwater visits Animal Man at his home. He tells him about waking up in the Arizona desert and no idea how he got there. He finds his way back to his apartment, where he found a note directing him to go to Arkham Asylum, speak with the Psycho Pirate. Psycho Pirate gives him a comic book depicting the origins of Animal Man, and a paper with a story about a fox on it. While searching for Animal Man, his body keeps phasing out of existence, and by the time he actually does find him, his body was half gone. The paper with the story about the fox suddenly morphs into a map. It leads Highwater and Animal Man to Arizona. They climb to the top of a cliff, and there they discover 12 buttons of peyote. Feeling they are tied to the secrets they are trying to unlock, they reluctantly take them. After a time, Animal Man is visited by an animal spirit totem called Foxy. Animal Man asks him why he doesn't have a totem that everybody seems to but him. And Foxy says, because he's special. He connects to the template, or the red, and all around him appear all different kinds of animals and insects. Then he realizes that they are all his totems. Highwater tells him that he's been hooked up to the morphogenic field, and it's where his animal powers come from. The field is a mesh of countless smaller fields, each one a blueprint, which guides a formation of atoms into molecules, molecules into cells, cells into tissues, organs, and systems. Each species is represented by its own field, and Animal Man is connected to all of them, that he can tap into his powers without being close to them. But Foxy tells him he still has much to learn. Now we see the red throughout the years in Animal Man comics, but the best description of the red and the avatars are during Jeff Lemire's Animal Man run in 2011. It starts with issue 3. We see Maxine leading her father Animal Man through the red. When they finally reach their destination, she has led Buddy to the Parliament of Limbs. They tell him that Maxine is a part of this place, that she is one of them, and that they are the totems of all the former avatars of the red. The life web connecting all living things. Animal Man says that he thought that he was the one, but they tell him no, that he is only meant to be a minor agent for the red, that he is meant to father and protect the next avatar, his daughter Maxine. All of a sudden, the rot suddenly breaks through the red, and Animal Man feels stronger than ever in the red. He tries to fight them off by himself. Continued in issue 4, Animal Man is down. Maxine asks the totems to fix him, but they tell her that she controls the red, and she controls the flesh, so only she can heal him. She bends his flesh. It feels like clay in her hands, and she closes his wounds. Buddy asks her what happened, and she tells him that she sent the rot away and healed him, but the totems didn't tell them that they haven't gotten rid of anything. It was simply an opening volley in a conflict sure to be long. But that story is for another time. Now, the red is a network web that unites all animals and microorganisms that has ever lived. Many heroes can tap into this life web and channel many animal abilities all at once if they choose to. Unlike the green, many heroes can access the life web simultaneously and can communicate or even control animals. This also includes humans. The avatar is its protector and has a few more abilities like healing or reconstructing a new body. When the avatar passes, they become part of the red and control its flow. These former avatars are called the Parliament of Limbs, or totems, and the current avatar is Maxine, Animal Man's daughter. The elemental forces and their avatars are what really hold the DC universe together. They continually shape and bring balance. If one crumbles, the universe crumbles. So they are constantly working to preserve everything. It's definitely, in my opinion, the most interesting thing in the DC universe. And that concludes part 1. Sorry it took so long to upload. I had to do a lot of reading and research for this video. Plus I've had the flu and a cold for over a week. But I think I'll cover a few more avatars, plus the Lord of Order and how they play into everything in the next video. But the very next one is still going to be the History of Daredevil Part 2. Also now, since I've had to reread all of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run to prepare for this video, I have been inspired to make a video on a certain issue that really blew me away. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. And I'll see you in the next one.